is unprecedented, but of course it's not. It's entirely precedented. We've seen it 4 times in 5 months. Are you getting used to this?
Good evening to you, Christian. Am I getting used to this? No, I've never seen anything like this. I was thinking back earlier today when you and I were up at Windsor and we saw all the protests against the former president and the Trump balloons in London. And I thought, wow, that's kind of unprecedented. But 91 criminal indictments, we've just never seen anything like this in the United States. And my friend Joe can speak about this at greater length from the legal perspective of it. But the president is in particular legal peril. Yeah. I've never seen a president of the United States indicted by a local district attorney, not a U.S. attorney, not a state attorney. And that's what we're going to see in Fulton County, Georgia later this evening. So, put your seatbelt on, Christian. We are in unprecedented territory.
Joe Moreno, he's changed his lawyer today. Does that reflect, do you think, what Ron's saying, that he clearly does see the legal peril that he's in at the moment?
Signals too much, other than he realized he needed a talented Georgia-specific attorney. We're not one size fits all, right? So there are those of us from New York. There are those of us on the more experience in the federal system. In this case, it's a very Georgia-centric set of charges. So I think it's a smart move to have a Georgia-experienced lawyer, particularly one who knows the Georgia RICO statute.
Yeah. Well, the RICO statute's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I was focusing yesterday, Joe, on Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, who used as a federal prosecutor the RICO law to chase the mob in New York. And yet here he is, ironically, facing a charge using the same law.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a brazen charge. I'll put on my defense lawyer hat as opposed to my prosecutor hat. It might be a bit of a stretch by the district attorney down there, Fani Willis. There might be some problems proving there was a criminal enterprise, which is what you need. You need a group that's an ongoing threat to the public, which is typically a mafia family. I think she might run into some hurdles saying that the Trump campaign was itself a criminal enterprise, but we'll see. The courts will work that out. But yes, there is a sense of irony here that at one point, Rudy Giuliani was sort of the face of truth and justice, at least for the Republican Party. And the fact that now, 20 years out of office, he's a criminal defendant, it's a pretty sad state of affairs.
Moreno, just a final point on Ramaswamy. I mean, he was the first to put his hand up that he would pardon Donald Trump if he was facing any jail time. Just talk to us about the legal point of that. I guess if Donald Trump himself was the candidate, he could pardon himself, correct?
Yeah, it's never been tried before, but I probably could pardon himself. More likely, if the cases are still ongoing, Donald Trump or another Republican could just stop them in their tracks. And that's more likely because I don't think these cases will be wrapped up by next October. But Ramaswamy, look, he's very glib. He's made a lot of money. He's an impressive guy. I do not think he's a serious candidate for president. I think maybe 10 years from now he could be, but his nod toward 9/11 conspiracies and his loyalty to Donald Trump. I mean, I think those candidates need to get together and uniformly say Donald Trump is not the future of the Republican Party, and there might not be a legal solution. It's a political solution. So I'm kind of turned off by Ramaswamy and his seeming devotion to Donald Trump.
Yeah, interesting. We're going to talk plenty more about the debate and the other candidates who were on stage last night as we focus on these pictures from Fulton County, where we're expecting Donald Trump to appear in a couple of hours' time. He is due to leave Bedminster, New Jersey, in the next 15-20 minutes. We'll see if we can catch a glimpse of the plane leaving New Jersey. It's about a 2-hour 15 flight to Atlanta. But for the moment, we'll take a quick break. Just on this issue, Fani Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County, the House Judiciary Committee, chaired by Republicans, said today they're going to launch an inquiry into her actions, whether she was coordinating or communicating with the Justice Department, whether she used federal funds to complete her investigation. It is a familiar playbook. I just wonder if there's hypocrisy on the part of the Republicans, that they're up in arms that lawyers are in court, lawyers who supported Donald Trump, and yet they're still prepared to investigate the investigator.
Yeah, I'm not that comfortable. I agree. I'm not that comfortable with Congress trying to insert itself here. I mean, normally, when you have overlapping charges between the federal and state governments, there is some coordination. And normally, one steps aside for the other. Typically, the state steps aside for the federal prosecutors. And so that's normally what we would see. So there is a little bit of overlapping here between the Jack Smith case regarding January 6th and the Fani Willis case in Georgia. But that said, they're free to do that. It might complicate the calendar. It might back things up a little bit. But to try to make it a congressional inquiry, I mean, we're just piling politics on top of politics. And at this point, I think we need to let the cases run themselves out. I don't think Congress has any role in intervening here.
OK, we'll take a quick pause. We're watching pictures from Bedminster, New Jersey. We'll continue to keep you up to date with Donald Trump's movements. We'll be right back. Carl, for the moment, thanks for that. Ron Christie, just ahead of Donald Trump's appearance at that jailhouse, Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff, appeared today. How important is he in setting out a timeline of what went on in Georgia?
I think he's very important, Christian, for the prosecution because he's the president's chief of staff, the former president's chief of staff. Having worked in the White House for 4 years, I can tell you that every piece of paper, every scheduling request, everything that gets to the president's desk, the White House chief of staff has to lay eyes on it and ultimately approve it. So the prosecution is going to want to use Mark Meadows to set some sort of timeline to piece together events that we still don't entirely know how they intend to prosecute this case. But Meadows will be very important. And just over the break, Christian, I have to look at my email here, and Donald Trump has already sent out an email, and he said, "Friends, reports are upcoming. My arrest in Atlanta will be televised. It's unjust. It's this and that." And then you scroll down to the bottom of the email, and he's trying to raise money on this. This is not even 10 minutes old. So Donald Trump is already back to being Donald Trump of it's unjust, it's unfair, and send me money.
Well, look at that shot that's in our screens at the moment. That is Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff, the number 2 in the White House during the Trump administration. They're photographed by the sheriff, the mugshot, and we're expecting we might get a similar mugshot of Donald Trump, and that is quite extraordinary. It is unprecedented to see people who were at the top of the American administration treated in this particular way. But Fani Willis has made it very clear, the district attorney in Georgia, that nobody will be given special treatment in this case. Joe Moreno, Mark Meadows have tried to get this changed, switched to a federal court, and House Republicans, in fact, have been investigating whether, in fact, a president should always be tried in a federal court. What do you make of the ruling that came down last night, which meant that he had to appear today at the Fulton County jailhouse?
Well, I actually think Mark Meadows has a potential good argument there under the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. He was acting as an officer of the United States in the function in which he's now being prosecuted. So I think there's a chance we might see this case lifted out of state court in Georgia, in which case it would go to federal district court in Georgia. So you wouldn't leave the state, but it would leave the state's jurisdiction. And then Fani Willis would have to figure out, does she sever the defendants and try to pull some of them back to state court, or let the entire case move up to federal court? So it's one of the number of issues surrounding these cases, which again is why I'm so skeptical when I hear very aggressive trial dates, because there are real legal issues that have to be ironed out. And Mark Meadows was ahead of the pack in raising that argument. And I think is going to be hearing as soon as Monday on his motion. So that'll be really interesting to see if he's successful there.
Chris Bruce, indeed so. And the discussion about the Constitution, Joe Moreno, I mean, we're already starting to see the flavour of the defence in this case. It's a First Amendment case. It's advice of counsel. Where are the lines? Because this is what the case will ultimately come down to. The advice that people like John Eastman and some of the others were giving him regarding the election and the count. If they were giving him false advice, if they were giving him knowingly false advice, is that covered by the First Amendment?
Well, so the strongest case here would have been if prosecutors could have brought the argument that Donald Trump willfully incited violence on January 6th, because there is no First Amendment protection. There's no free speech protection if you incite violence. But they didn't do that, and which means I have to think they don't have the evidence. I think they would have liked to do that. But he was not charged with inciting violence, nor was he linked to any of the hundreds of cases that were prosecuted up here in Washington, D.C. regarding the violence of January 6th. So then what they've done is they've stretched it to say, okay, we're going to say that Donald Trump defrauded the United States, relying on lawyers that were giving him not just bad, but illegal advice. That's where I think it's going to be difficult, because not so much on a First Amendment basis. I think, one, there's a problem with the definition of fraud that the Supreme Court has ruled has to be financial fraud. But then also, I think you have to get into the state of mind of Donald Trump. And he had to know he was perpetrating a lie. He had to know that he really lost the election. And while most of us would listen to people who told us we lost and say, okay, I guess we lost, Donald Trump is a strange guy. And so it's not what a reasonable person would have thought. It's what that person, Donald Trump, thought. So Jack Smith is going to have to show that he knew he lost and yet kept arguing that he won and the election should be reversed. So I think it's going to be a challenging case. So anyone who says this is a slam dunk, I think is really kind of stretching it.
Well, he still believes that he won the 2020 election, and so do plenty of those supporters who were outside the Fulton County jail this evening, plenty of them with placards that say Donald Trump won. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Do stay with us. With BBC News, we've got Chris Bruce, Anna Moreno, Ron Christie and Joe Moreno with us tonight on our panel. These are the live pictures of Newark, New Jersey, where Donald Trump is shortly expected to take off for Atlanta, Georgia. He's expected at the jailhouse in Fulton County at 7:30 local time this evening. Rather grey, murky day in New Jersey, which might match the mood of the president. He doesn't tend to like these appearances, although, as Ron Christie has suggested, he uses them to his benefit. And in fact, Ron Christie already has an email in his inbox. He is campaigning on the events of today. No doubt will campaign on the mugshot if one does appear, Ron Christie.
Oh, you know he's going to do it, Christian. I guarantee you the DA will release that mugshot. I guarantee you Trump will go to his social media site and release that, and the dollars will come in. One thing I want to go and reflect back on what my friend Jim Moreno said is so important. So many people think this is going to be a slam dunk case against the former president of the United States. If you had charges of incitement, of violence, or acts against the United States, you would have charged him with that. We have a free First Amendment freedom of speech right here, but you can't go in a movie theater and yell fire and have everyone run out. You know, there's a limitation on your ability to speak freely. And I just sit here and, having read the indictment, think they're throwing up spaghetti against the wall. They're throwing a whole bunch of things up there. And the prosecution, in a very short amount of time, in less than a couple months' time, wants to bring the trial to order. Boy, you better have the evidence dead to rights, because you know what? Republicans are going to look at this and say, you did this to our former president. Wait till we get another Democrat president. We're going to do this to you and bring him up. And I think this is exactly what the framers fear the most of using our judicial system against political opponents.
Chris